Good morning, folks. Welcome to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroy, your host, and we're in luck because we're going to be speaking with Dr. Ignacio Ciampetti, our row crop specialist, about sorghum. And it's that time of year to be thinking about sorghum, and Ignacio is going to be answering all our questions. So we're going to take a break now. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsor. See you in a minute.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities. Big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroy, your host, and we're in luck because we're on the agronomy farm at K-State, and we also have Dr. Ignacio Ciampetti, our row crop specialist, with us today, and we're going to be talking about grain sorghum. So, Ignacio, it's getting that time here pretty soon. We'll be putting sorghum in the ground. So, what are some of the things we need to be thinking about? I'm thinking about planting date. Let's talk about planting date first.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about planting date, one of the main factors that is always coming to my mind is, soil temperature.
Right.
I mean, there are some guys that they were trying to push early, and the question is how early you can go. On sorghum. And then on sorghum, it's a little bit more flexible when you think about corn and when you think about soybeans, right?
Right.
In corn we are talking sometimes about 55 degrees. In soybeans we are talking about 60 degrees. In sorghum we can probably see that. Well, I like to see more temperatures going to 65.
Right.
And I want to see those plants coming out right on time, 5-7 days after.
Right.
And in sorghum, for me, one of the main things is the uniformity also.
Right.
And sometimes it's not so much related to plants and space between plants, because sorghum can compensate.
Because of the tillering.
Of course, if we are talking about big gaps, it will be hard to compensate big gaps. But we are talking about emergence, and we are talking about how fast, in duration and time between planting and emergence.
Right.
When we are looking at we are 1 week, 10 days, I think that we are in good conditions, plants coming at the same time. When we are looking at the seeds is sitting there for 2-3 weeks, then it's when we start to see a lot of issues, on lack of population, lack of uniformity, and then those situations are really hard to compensate.
And then you got weed control issues when you got big gaps and that sort of thing.
That's one of probably when we have a nice kind of a survey going around with farmers a couple years ago. What is the number one factor for sorghum production? Weed control.
Weed control. Yeah.
So when you are thinking of planting, your sorghum, population is one factor that could be essential when you are thinking about weed control.
Well, there's some issues of planting on the too-late side. That's on the back side at maturity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some people are saying, okay, if I'm going too late, I might be able to put my blooming time into a really nice environment. Summer rain, I'm catching those late season summer rains, and I'm catching temperatures, dropping down.
Right.
What might be one of the main issues is, what is the probability of finishing your crop?
Right.
Yeah. So if you place your blooming time way too late in the season, the probability for that crop to finish, it will probably decrease quite fast. More when you are moving from late August, early September, and more when you are thinking in the north section of the state.
Right.
I'm thinking in northwest, I'm thinking in north central. Those areas are the ones that pushing way too late blooming time.
Right.
It will put you in a big issue to finish the crop.
And also the northern part of the state, especially northwest, is that nighttime temperatures are cooler, so it's already slowing down in that August, early September range.
Yeah, it's a mix of those combination of cool temperatures.
Now we used to have a publication on the probability of freezing at various blooming times across the state.
Yeah.
Hang on, we got to take a break. Folks, stay with us. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Welcome to Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in Oakley, Kansas on I-70 at exit 76. I-70, after all, is America's main street, and we're right here on Main Street for you. Now that I'm an Oakley resident, I still come in almost every day, and I sit and listen to the conversations of the people around me. The guys who are talking about the big elk they just bagged, or the folks who are taking their kid to college for the first time. People just traveling up and down the highway. Real people, just like you and me. And they find just what I find here, real people to serve them. There's history, there's scenery. We hope you'll stop and see us soon. Welcome to Oakley.
I'm Sarah, and this is my husband, Travis.
We both grew up working on family ranches, me in Northern California and Travis in Kansas. We met in college, got married, and took corporate jobs in the beef industry. But soon we realized we missed the production side of the industry.
So we made the daring move to start our own cattle business in southeast Kansas, while also starting our family.
Watch our story and the stories of other young Kansas food producers at kansaslivingmagazine.com/meetafarmer.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities, big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Schroy, your host, and with us we have Ignacio Ciampetti. We're talking about grain sorghum. We talked a little bit about planting dates a second ago. Let's talk about plant populations, because that's like corn, that sort of thing. There's a wide range of populations across the state based on moisture.
Yeah, and it's a very good point that you bring in the conversation. Most of the people tend to think about corn as an example of plant population. I mean, most of the times on sorghum we are not seeing those responses. I mean, most of the times we are not seeing that increasing population is really a big factor on sorghum, and there is a big separation when you go to from western Kansas.
Yeah. And rainfall 12, 16, 18 inches.
Exactly. When we are talking on those environments, probably our optimal population might be around 20,000-25,000 plants, and in some situations even lower than that.
Right.
Okay. And when you are moving to central Kansas, you are talking about more 40,000 or even 50,000-60,000 plants.
Right.
And then in some scenarios that we have farmers working on the eastern side, I mean, they are even pushing sometimes 70 or 80,000 plants.
90, yeah.
Okay.
And irrigated.
And irrigated conditions. So population tend to be a factor. I mean, we are looking most of the times to the same scenario. I mean, increasing your yield potential in environments, it looks like you can change the population and you will see that they is responding to those changes. Right. Sorghum, the main difference with corn is the ability to compensate.
Right, and you're talking about tillering.
Exactly. And then that's one of the things that when we are working with farmers, we are always making sure that they understand this concept on the idea of saying we're not looking at plants per acre.
Right.
We're looking at heads per acre.
Right.
Okay. So just to give you a kind of a simple math, 20,000. I mean, a farmer in western Kansas planting 20,000 or less, having 20,000 plants per acre. If we get 2 or 3 tillers in those, you get 40 or 50,000 heads per acre.
Right.
If you go to a different scenario in a central Kansas, a farmer planting 40 or 50,000, if he gets only 1 tiller on those, he gets exactly the same number of heads per acre.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's not really so much about, I mean, the plants per acre, but also we need to take a look to see how those plants will be compensating and tillering.
Right, and it's the basis of how much rainfall you get during the season. If weather's good, that sorghum plant's going to react to it by tillering more, or vice versa. If you don't get it, it may just have, like you said, just 1 or 2.
The tillering is really connected. I mean, it's a good point. It's really connected to temperature, radiation, and supply of resources.
Right.
When the plant is looking at temperature, radiation, and nutrient supply, and resources are abundant, the plant starts tillering. It's a response to increase the biomass and increase, the plant. When the plant is in a very poor environment, those tillers are not coming.
Right.
And sometimes they are coming too late, and they're producing some other issues.
Yeah, a big difference in maturity date of the early heads versus the late heads.
Exactly.
We've got to take a break here now, Ignacio, so hang on, don't run off, okay?
We'll
like you did the last time. Folks, stay with us. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm, so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well on their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we're glad to answer it and work with you.
Ag Promo Source is a unique group of marketing specialists with one mission: help your ag business grow. Each affiliate has their own area of expertise, and they work together to bring you advice, products, and services. To get started, visit agpromosource.com. Ag Promo Source. Together we grow.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities. Big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Schroyer. Ignacio didn't run off during the break. Thank you, Ignacio, for that. It's kind of hard to chase you down out in the field. Hey, let's talk a little bit about sorghum hybrids. I know you've got a graduate student that has been working on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a student working the last 2 years in 5 locations across the state with the idea of trying to quantify how the hybrids respond under different rainfall environments.
Right.
Just so simple, I mean, question of, are all the hybrids responding the same way? Can we just pick any hybrid and sorghum will just yield?
Right.
And I think that's one of the main messages after, 2 years, we have 18 sites.
Right. Site years.
Site years. And then you start to see the complexity behind. So, and then when someone starts to look at hybrids, and they say, well, they're all similar. Not at all. We need to probably start using more of the information that we're collecting in our crop performance test.
Right. That's across, the K-State does it.
The K-State, yeah, the K-State, we have a crop performance test. We try different hybrids in different locations, so the agents are working and putting demo plots, and they have, we have information on hybrids coming from several sections of the state.
Right.
The main question is how many of our farmers are really using it,
right.
And I'm encouraging them to start taking a look to those, because
if you're already doing it, you're probably maximizing profits. If you're not, you're losing out.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just amazing by glancing to some of those pages. You tend to see difference in hybrids that they are 10, 15 bushels, and then you take a look to the maturity groups and they're exactly the same.
Right.
So, and then sometimes we emphasize so much about seeding rates or row spacing, and then how much are we talking about hybrid selection?
Right.
Okay. So this study, on this with my grad student, we were looking at those sites, and then we tend to see some hybrids that they are aggressive in response. They respond not really that well in dryland situations when you are below 100 bushels, but they respond very aggressive when you start going to 150 or above.
Okay.
But then we have some hybrids that they were very stable. That when you are going to a low environments, less than 100 bushels or more than 150, they were always kind of a very consistent on the yield.
Right. So you're not going to get hurt on the low end, but you're not going to maximize the high end of those.
Exactly. It's like taking a conservative approach.
Okay.
You are not maximizing your yields on the high end, but still you are doing very well, and probably the best on the low side.
So the cost of seed, but wouldn't you be advantaged to go with a variety that is pretty aggressive? It will really respond to it. If the seeds doesn't cost too much.
The seed difference sometimes is sort of minimum. So what we need to start making sure is that we need to start using those hybrids in different environments.
Right.
We could not play with the same hybrid in different locations. We are seeing difference sometimes of 10 bushels.
Right.
Just from the bag. And that's one of the things that we need to emphasize.
Just because your father-in-law is selling the seed doesn't mean necessarily you should be planting. Well, maybe you should. If you want to have the farm later on.
Exactly, you should. At least some, small acres, but be smart enough to take a look to those information and to use that information for your own benefit.
Yeah, there's some big differences out there. We got to take a break. Folks, stay with us. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
I had this horse. It was a good horse, except for when the wind was blowing above 30 miles an hour. Wind was blowing about 35, 40, and I saddled him up, rode him out to the end of the lane, and I thought, well, he's doing pretty good. And about 6 jumps later, I was laying on the ground and thinking, boy, my shoulder sure hurt. I kept waiting, and it didn't get better, and so I went to orthopedic surgeon, and that showed that I had torn rotator cuff. He said, well, we'll have to do surgery. I farm and ranch by myself. This is not going to work out very well. I'd been sleeping in my recliner for about 2.5 years because it hurt too much to sleep in bed on my side. I'd heard about Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center on the radio. Gotten down there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 11:30 the procedure was all over. They just took some fat out of my side here and spun that down for about 45 minutes and then injected it in my shoulders, and I was on my way. It's something you don't hear about, but I thought it was worth a try, and I'm really pleased. It's really worked out well for me.
This Medford, New Jersey school bus runs on biodiesel, and so do these. In fact, all of these buses run on clean-burning biodiesel, which is great because the more we use biodiesel in our heavy-duty vehicles, the less carbon pollution in our air. Think how great it would be if more of our school buses ran on biodiesel. More biodiesel, less carbon pollution. More is less. Biodiesel, America's advanced biofuel.
Tarwater Farm and Home has been family-owned and operated since its beginning in 1978. What you need for farm and agriculture, lawn and garden, clothing and footwear, and so much more. You'll be surprised at what you'll find in this huge store. They have what you need and lots of it. So come take a look. You'll discover that customer service is first and foremost. Always has been with the Tarwaters. Tarwater Farm and Home, 4107 North Topeka Boulevard.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities. Big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroy, your host, and with us we have Ignacio Ciampetti, our row crop specialist. We're talking about sorghum, by the way. Ignacio, there's a lot of corn being planted over the past few years, and maybe to the detriment or reduction of acres of wheat and grain sorghum. But not all acres should be planted to corn necessarily. Where is that point in where sorghum should be planted, or maybe where corn should be planted? So what's the research tell us on that?
Well, there is a very good summary that we performed at K-State in the last 5 years, and basically trying to identify which one is a point and break-even point that at some point what we are looking about yields in sorghum versus yields in corn.
Right.
So what we were coming out on that research was when we are looking about 120 and 110 bushel is a point that we are looking below that number. Okay.
Right.
Is a point that sorghum tends to be more efficient.
Okay. Right. So anything above 120, the yield environment consistently yielding 120, say corn is probably your best option.
Yeah, and most of the times it's connected to the water use efficiency topic.
Right.
And it's very simplistic approach of definition of the water use efficiency is increasing yields with the same water.
Right.
Right? That might be one. And then what we are looking is sorghum is very good crop, very efficient in using same level of water and increasing yields in low yielding environments when we are going to 120 below.
Right.
When we are looking about 120 above, we are seeing that in those situations, corn tends to be more productive. And then there is a separation, on the corn yield potential. Corn tends to be more aggressive on the high yielding environments. Corn demands more nutrients and demands, more water.
There's more cost involved with corn.
Of course.
Up front.
Yeah, when the farmers are looking at the seed costs and they are looking at the fertilizer costs and they are looking to some other costs, corn tends to be an expensive crop.
Right. So it better be yielding a lot more. It's a good crop, but not maybe for everybody.
Not for everybody. So the main point is to emphasize in a high yielding situations, when we are looking more than 150 bushels, farmers, they probably looking at corn as a very good option.
Right.
When you're looking at below those numbers, 120 or below, sorghum tends to be one of the best options.
Right. Well, it's not that sorghum can't produce 150 or 180, but you're probably, if you're doing 150 or 180 in sorghum, you're probably a little higher that in corn. Right?
In corn, and you bring an excellent point. We are looking at sometimes, yield potential in sorghum can be 200 to 150 bushels.
Right.
So it's a good point that you bring. It's not that we cannot produce that. We know that at those yield levels, we know that corn can be more productive.
Right. Okay. We've got to take a break. Hang on here. Folks, stay with us. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Welcome to our Bar B, 8,000 plus square feet Western store with something for everyone in the family. We have boots, belts, hats, jeans, anything you could want to outfit you and your horse. Come visit our line of saddles. We have 400 plus new and used saddles in stock. We offer tack, grooming supplies, headstalls, breast collars, you name it, we've got it for you and your horse. That's our Bar B, 1 mile east of Highway 4 on Northeast 39th. Our Bar B, where Western is a way of life.
Heinen Brothers, a fourth-generation Northeast Kansas farm family, knows how tough farming can be. Farmers helping farmers. Heinen Brothers Ag, selling and servicing crop protection products, fertilizer, anhydrous ammonia, cover crops, quality aerial and ground application. Call today to learn about our extended term financing program. 800-760-4964. HeinenBrothersAg.com.
Hi, I'm Randy.
And I'm Paul from PFI.
We would like to personally invite you to stop by PFI, home of Boot Daddies.
PFI is America's Western store, covering over 50,000 square feet.
Over 25,000 boots.
Visit Saddle City with the largest selection of saddles and tack anywhere.
A huge selection of hats at Big Spur Hat Company in PFI Town.
And choose from the best brands of clothing and accessories for the entire family.
PFI, located on Highway 65 at the Battlefield exit in Springfield. And I'm not kidding.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities. Big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Schroyer. Ignacio, in this last section here, let's talk about some things that can go wrong. And I have a couple of things in mind, like compaction. So take it from there.
Well, I mean, one of the main issues, and sometimes, I mean, we emphasize it so much on corn about uniformity.
Right.
And then we don't really tend to think more about sorghum.
Right.
And sorghum uniformity is also a big factor. When we are thinking about, okay, I really want to get in my field the maximum yield potential, if we are not starting from a good point, we will never be getting there. Okay.
Right, right.
And we always say, anytime that you are planting your seed, you are almost taking 80% of your decisions.
Right.
I mean,
okay.
And then your planting date specifically and your seed conditions, I mean, for in the soil at that moment will define the yields.
Right.
Compaction, I mean, basically is producing lack of uniformity and is producing, declination. I mean, declination of the number of plants. Roots are basically not, developed or really poorly developed. Mm-hmm. And then the consequences on that, mm-hmm. you probably see some consequences, immediate consequences, and maybe some plants that are falling, some plants that they don't have a good root system, they don't have, nutrient deficiencies, because they are not
drought stress,
mm-hmm. and there might be some consequences that you will get to see more at the end of the season.
I'm thinking of a couple stock rot issues.
Stock rot issues and some other disease, affecting, at the end of the season. And sometimes people tend to think that it's only connected to disease pressure, but it's a combination of things.
Right.
When we are getting to the end of the season, the plant is remobilizing, it's moving carbon and it's moving biomass from leaves, stems.
Right, exactly.
And those stems from flowering, they start to shrink.
Right.
Until the end of the season.
Right.
So that's a problem. Those plants, they tend to be stressed.
Right.
If you add poor root architecture from mm-hmm. planting conditions that were really bad, mm-hmm. and if you add some disease pressure combining with the weather conditions, perfect for that disease to proliferate.
You've got a lot of sorghum laying over.
You had the perfect storm there.
Right.
Last year, we have seen a lot of those combinations. We have farmer calls, we have visits with farmers asking us why specific areas of the field were affected.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it could be a little more droughty, or it was a little wet when you planted in that area, thus the compaction.
And then we go back to the idea, make sure when you're planting, put in good soil conditions. Again, the same concept. If you need to wait 1 week, we are not losing on sorghum changing planting date too much.
Right.
Moving 1-2 weeks, we are still fine. Make sure that we put the seed into the best soil condition, temperature and moisture wise.
Right. And the other issue too, you hit a button there for me, is that again, north central and northwest, if you go too late, now you're running into some maturity issues and dry down issues like we've seen in the last couple of years. Dry down's an issue.
Yeah, and then north central, northwest, one of our main issues up there are the length of the season.
Right.
So if we go too late, late, we don't have enough time to finish the crop.
Right.
And then we have some freeze events, impacting and interrupting our grain filling.
Yeah.
And then we see
lighter test weight.
Lighter test weight, small grains, so the yields are being impacted, because we cannot really finish the crop.
Right. Yeah, compaction, as far as I'm concerned, compaction is one of the big issues that we have.
For me, compaction and the lack of uniformity for my crop at the beginning is, for me, a number one problem.
Okay. Ignacio, always good talking to you. Thanks for talking to us about sorghum.
Thank you very much.
Folks, thanks for being with us, and don't forget, next time about this time on Friday, we'll have another issue of That's My Farm. See you then.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.